gonna win, you're always gonna grin. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. Never gonna lose, never gonna win. Long as you're happy, you're always gonna grin. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. Here we go. Hi, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing outstandingly, thank you. How are you, Ashley?
Yeah, absolutely hunky-dory. Thanks very much indeed. I've just noticed we were having this little chat earlier backstage. I put the wrong one up after all of that. So we've got two different styles. So when people start coming on, we'll see what they say. But Mark, so tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, please.
Right. Background. I'm an accountant by profession. I haven't done the accounting myself in a long, long time. And I started training as an accountant many, many years back in the 1970s, would you believe?
Wow.
And worked for 3 major PLCs, went up to board level in my 20s, left to get deliberately into the SME sector so I could get a broader involvement in the management of businesses, and then moved on from there to run my own businesses since I was 31 years old, and now I'm kind of 31 plus VAT.
Brilliant. So did you went into accounting as a working for a company and then being their in-house accountant rather than being a practitioner, is that right?
Yeah, I did. And so actually starting a practice with no capital and no experience of running a practice, with £4 in a building society and no clients, and then transforming it into a
so hang on. So basically you stood at the end of this precipice and jumped off.
That was about it, yeah. So all I had was what was in my nettop computer.
Yeah.
And I fortunately got clients pretty quickly. Had to borrow a computer. Long story as to where my money was locked up, but anyway, that's a story for another day. And I built it from there. So I ended up being a 4-partner, 3-office, 26 team members, and 7
all from £3. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it just goes to show it's. I had a roof over my head, but you know, it was a bit of a rags to riches story, I suppose, in some ways. So.
Right. Okay. So everyone watching now, I'm just going to quickly say hello. We've got Pavel's just come on to say hi, and also Marie. I don't know if you know these guys, but hi guys. Thanks for joining in. You see a lot of stuff on social media now, and everyone seems to be an overnight success, right? And here you are saying you went rags to riches. We don't know how long that period is. We don't know how many nights you came home and cried. We don't know how many times you had to make a tin of beans last 2 days. How long was it before you got from the precipice to where you were, as you say, riches?
I think it was probably 3 years to start feeling comfortable. I kept doubling my turnover year on year, and sometimes a bit more. So just had to keep at it. And I always wanted to scale it. But I often joke. People talk about being an overnight success, and I say, well, it took me about 15 years.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But we don't see that. We don't see all the grafting that you've been doing. We don't see your legs paddling like mad under the water like a swan.
Absolutely. As I put it to people, people don't believe what they see; they see what they believe. As they choose to think it was that easy, then give it a go, because it's not. But there is help at hand.
We were just talking about this lady. We weren't talking about you, Heather. Hi. But Estelle's got a great question. What piece of advice have you received that has stuck with you over the years? That's a great question, Estelle. Hi, how are you doing? Yeah, that was a great question there.
I think probably the biggest one is surround yourself with people who are better than you are. And in my case, that's not very difficult, because I think we've spoken before, Ashley. I was born and educated initially in a third world country. It was a little place called Wolverhampton.
I was just trying to think. I can't remember this story. I can't. I
come from a very ordinary background, but I was also dyslexic at school in the 60s and early 70s.
I know a few people that are dyslexic from your sort of age group, and you weren't dyslexic back then. You were stupid or thick or the dunce or whatever, weren't you?
Yeah, but at least I had a label for it. Oh, I'm thick. That's okay.
But that's a bit harsh for a kid, though, isn't it?
It is terrible. But that's how it was back then. Nobody knew, so it wasn't their fault. But anyway, that's a bit of history. But again, it does mean sometimes you've got to overcome issues and challenges in life, and nobody gets a free ticket.
No, absolutely.
Life is not like that unless you win the lottery or something like that and come into money quickly. You have to just knuckle down, work hard, and earn it. And
absolutely.
And there are shortcuts, and we'll talk about some of those today, which is the important bit, really.
Yeah, sure. The shortcuts are learning from somebody else that's done it before, isn't it? And I got a great question from Heather now. Did you ever become overwhelmed with work, even though you had staff contractors to help?
Not really, no. I mean, I've always said that I went to work to play, and I still do. That's
what I do. That is what I do. I love what I do.
Yeah, and quite honestly, one of my quotes from, I'm not sure the date of this one, but I'm compiling a book of my quotes. One of them is, success is failure turned inside out.
Yep.
So you have to go through these processes of the tough rituals and challenges sometimes to get to the place where you are comfortable. And I'm not talking about money and stuff and things and what have you in that sense. Earning money is not as difficult as people make it, actually. But putting that aside, you can have all the money in the world, but you can still be miserable. So your first job is to tackle what you really want. So when our business looks at accountants that we might have the chance to work with, the first thing I want to be convinced of is that we can give them value for money, but based on the fact that they're doing what they really want to do. They're not chasing somebody else's dream.
Yeah, and that's important, isn't it? So that brings me nicely on to my next question. What is it you do?
Well, as I said, there was a history of starting a practice and building it to a substantial practice. It was sold in 2014. I had also built and sold several other businesses. And so I was driving around on my tractor around my farm for 4 days a week.
Fantastic.
And then one of my managing directors of the companies that I retained could see I was getting a bit bored with that, and was probably Warwickshire's worst farmer anyway.
Along with Jeremy Clarkson.
Yes, right. And so he said, what we've done with tax, we worked solely for professional service firms, mainly accountants who got stuck on tax and then came to David and I for complex tax advice and work. And so we grew that and grew that and grew that. And then the decision was in 2016 to add on a number of other services. So we now have 28 services. The 5 big ones for us are tax, Then we have our own financial service company that accountants can jump on the back of. So they get a wealth management firm overnight, literally with their own branding, funding. And then we move on to legal. So we've got a whole legal team, and then insolvency and recovery. Insolvency and recovery is the fifth one. But across the board, we've got over 300 professionals who are effectively, if you're working with us, are just part of your team.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So as an accountant, you've got no risk other than the very small amount you pay us. And then we obviously give you a revenue share if we're doing the work with you or on your behalf. We can white label it. So that's just part of what we do. But that's the simplest bit to explain. To put it in a nutshell, what we do is we enable good regional accountancy firms from literally startup to, we've got 5 of the top 100 firms, enable them to punch above their weight and compete with the top 50 firms. I say top 50 firms, it's probably more like top 10 firms in reality.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm in and are in which accountant to go to. I've got the friendly guy down the road, and I know them because they've been in the community for a long time. But in Exeter, we've got PKF or one of the other ones. I'm like, oh, I really need to go to them because my local guy, nice that he is, he's not going to be able to do the legal and he hasn't got a wealth manager. But now I can go to him and I'm going to get exactly the same stuff. I'm going to get better service, aren't I, really, than I would get if I went to one of the big 4 in Exeter or something.
The beauty of regional accountancy firms is they become friends with their clients and they care about their clients enormously. So the client is always going to get a better service level than dealing with one of the big players. But also because of the way we've structured so cleverly what we do, the accountant's not carrying all that cost that a top 10 firm would be carrying. And therefore, the client could get value for money. And let's face it, the clients that you really want are relational clients that are looking for value for money. Most of decent clients, they don't want a cheap accountant, do they? They want value for money.
Yeah.
So we enable that to keep the cost at regional prices. So the client only pays when they step up and need the backup that our professional teams provide.
No, love all of that. So, and I guess you offer other kinds of support as well for accountants and bookkeepers that become part of your team?
Yeah, I mean, effectively, we've got all the CPD anybody could want within the tag group. So all the webinars, the regional events, the annual conference and so forth. We've got an enclosed WhatsApp group, but it's moderated by some of those team members, those 300 team members. So if somebody does put an answer in the WhatsApp group that's not quite right, and this can cover any technical area at all to do with business, then it will get picked up and corrected, or we'll say take it offline and we'll chat about it, or this is a high risk area, be careful, there are some dangers involved in this particular area. And that might be company law, it might be another area of law, it might be tax, it might be a software issue, it might be accounting disclosure, and so on and so forth.
So I'm working in my little practice now doing a tax return for somebody, and they've got this non-fungible, I can't even say it, an NFT.
Yes.
They've got a non-fungible token. And they go, oh my goodness, what on earth is that? Put it in the WhatsApp group, and there'll be someone in there that's been there, done that, and they'll come back and go, oh, you need to do this, Ash.
Yeah, there's not much knowledge about NFTs out there, nor blockchain, which is an area of fascination for me. And I'm working with some proper experts on blockchain, NFTs, smart contracts, and crypto.
Yeah,
it will affect everybody's life. Everybody's, going down the line. I think initially probably the smart contracts, but NFTs, word of warning, it will go the same way as crypto, where there'll be those, big cross, don't do it sort of stuff.
Sure.
Some of the legitimate property-backed NFTs, I've got a reasonable amount of time for those, but you've got to look at it logically, I think, with NFTs. Anyway, we digress on to...
Yeah, we do, because we got a question here. We've got 2 questions. So Estelle and Heather are vying for questions at the moment. So what's the best testimony you've received so far from a member then, Mark?
I think the one that really sticks out in mind is because it changed a life. And there's a sad part to this story, but I'll come back to that. When you help a pretty large practice who's turning over millions, it's a great feeling. When you help a micro practice and change lives, that's enormously gratifying and pleasurable to do. And during COVID, we had to switch the way in which we recruited new firms. So we took on a micro practice, and the day after we did a very short Zoom presentation, at the end of that call, the accountant said, right, sign me up as a silver member, which we did. So the paperwork goes out, and literally the next morning at 11:21, I can remember the time of the email, it said, thanks both for yesterday. So now I am a silver member. However, before I signed the electronic document sign-up forms this morning, I had a meeting with a prospect who turned out to be larger than I expected. They had 3 million turnover, 400,000 profits before tax. And at this point, I usually start to make excuses why I can't represent them. However, I found myself talking about exit strategies, pension planning, wills and trust, and there's a big long list of things in the email. And then he said, it's amazing the confidence it gives you having a team behind you. And I believe they will become my biggest client to date, paying £12,000 a year in fees, double my biggest client so far. I knew that TAG would have a great impact on my practice. I didn't expect it would happen so quickly. And I read it and I thought, nor did I. So it's before he joined.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sadly, his wife is running the business. Last year, they were away in Canada on holiday and he died of a heart attack, which is, I don't want to dwell too much, or I know I'll end up welling up again. So incredibly sad. But
and that's the thing. That's the thing, isn't it? What you do is you get involved with these businesses, and they don't become clients; they become friends, don't
absolutely, they? Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we called it. I notice now everybody's going, "Oh, we're a community." All the software companies, everybody kind of followed suits. The institute. And so 7 years ago, you tended not to hear community very much. But when David, my co-founder, said, do you want to start another network? I used to be involved in one before. And I said, not really, but I wouldn't mind starting a community. I said, call it semantics, but I want to create a family where everybody trusts each other and helps each other and works together. And I'm very pleased to say we've done that. We've absolutely done that.
And that's one of the things I love about working in this space is that there's no competition anymore. It's all collaboration.
Yeah.
You know,
I know all the other accountancy influencers out there. They're all friends. I invite them to speak at our conferences. What we do is different anyway to the other groups out there. So as I say to people, we're a category of one. Nobody else actually does what we do, how we do it, probably because nobody was stupid enough to throw millions of pounds at it in the blind faith that it would work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's working now. So a question from Heather. Now, I'm guessing Heather wants to have a little chat with you. I don't know, but do you speak directly with the clients, or is it passed back to the individual? So I'm guessing, Heather, is if you've got somebody's got a tax problem, will someone tell you what to say to the client, or will they talk to the client for you? So I think that's the question.
Very often when firms join us, they ask the question, can we white label the tax advice, for instance? And because obviously there's not the same regulation as there might be on the legal services or insolvency advice that we've got. So on tax, they might say, can we white label it? Very quickly, they realise that the client doesn't care. We're not going to poach a client, so they know that. So we engage with the client. And so it is perfectly like all our 31 UK tax consultants and all our tax correspondents across 63 jurisdictions across the world are like part of your team as an accountant. And what we do with the financial planning side, we allocate one of our chartered financial planners to do all the pensions, assurances, investment work with your clients completely for free. There's no additional charge for that. And then overnight, you've got a branded financial service business with your own colours, part of your website. It's not redirected anywhere else. And then obviously we do the regulation. That's been agreed with the Financial Conduct Authority.
Wow. Wow, that's fantastic.
So
yeah,
that's
perfect.
just an insight into.
Yeah, no. So you're really adding value to these small practices that are out there. So
well,
that's
small
great.
and small and large. So in this case, size really doesn't matter.
Sure.
So,
no, love it. Pavel's got a question as well. We've got all these questions coming in, which is great. What steps would you recommend for somebody who needs sustainability in business in a startup scenario?
Well, sustainability in my mind is more about the sort of protection of the ecosystem. But I think the question there is more about sustainability of the business and the practice from a commercial perspective. And really the biggest thing that clients are looking for is value for money, but also that personal service. I think where the big banks went wrong was when they started taking managers out of local branches and put them all into business centres in the nearest big city, which was good for accountants because it left us as clearly the only really trusted business advisor locally. So I think if you look after clients, give them great service. So that's your first point to visit. Are we giving fantastic personalized customer service? And thereafter, you will not lose clients and they will recommend and refer clients, which is obviously your best source of building your business if you're getting clients who just keep referring more. So we've got members who haven't actually got a website at all. They don't do any advertising because all the business just keeps rolling in through the door.
Yeah, no,
word of mouth.
Yeah, you don't need to do certain things if you've got a steady stream of business. So absolutely superb. We're running out of time, and I haven't asked you too many questions, but I want to know what challenges are you seeing bookkeepers and accountants having at the moment, Mark?
Well, the biggest challenge, number one, is actually that people can't get and retain talent. And that's just not in the accountancy and tax space, of course. That's everywhere. We see it every day. So that is a big issue. And hence having the backup of somebody like us, and lots of other firms do bits of what we do, but also offshoring, finding a reputable offshore firm. So ours are tried and tested and proven, working with dozens of firms successfully every month. And onshoring as well, you can actually sort of say doing the lower value work so that you can work with those those relational clients rather than transactional clients. So you're doing the higher value work for the right sort of client, but the transactional stuff you can outsource, whether it's onshore or offshore. Again, we can show how to do that. The second thing is really the keeping up with the digital developments and transformation. So quite a lot of my time is having fun playing about with things like Deep Dream, and yes, you might raise your eyebrows, but it's basically AI imagery, creating images in seconds that you
okay. So yeah, there's a few of these. There's a few of these
all over the news. Suddenly, the last few days last week or so has been ChatGPT, which I've been experimenting with for quite some time. And so clearly, the world is moving very, very quickly. And again, it's quite difficult as a small practice to be able to keep up with everything that's going on out there with technology, with making tax digital, and additional regulation and so forth is coming into play. So it's difficult on your own to manage those things. It's a bit like juggling.
Yeah, and you've got clients' work coming in all the time as well, and we've got to get some new clients over here. So how do I join TAG?
Well, just contact myself. I've got a 4-minute presentation that I do over Zoom. No, I don't send it out because it needs a little bit of embellishment for another 5 minutes afterwards. If it's not for you, or it's not for you right now, that's fine. But I would say take a look. My favourite postcode in London. You may ask yourself, why is Mark going into his favourite postcode in London? Kings Road, SW3. SW3 for me means some will, some won't, so what? If it's not the right timing, it's not the right timing. And we never want to take subscriptions off anybody if we're not giving them bang for buck.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's amazing. And so you've got a conference in October. Do you do any other meetups between now and then?
Yeah, we do quarterly regional meetings. Non-member accountants can come to that. There's a small ticket price, £60 or so, depending on the venue. So we've got one coming up in Crewe next week. Then we've got one later in the year in Newcastle. We've got one in Birmingham. We've got one in central London. And the annual conference we base in South Warwickshire because it's probably the most accessible place for all the UK members to be able to converge on.
Yeah, no, perfect. Awesome. We've gone well over our 15 minutes. I've got one more question for you.
Okay.
But before I do that, I just want to say thank you to everybody for all the questions. I don't know if you noticed, Marie asked exactly the same question that I asked. So thank you for that, Marie. But I want to just go to my guest next week. I'm having all the great guests at the moment. So you this week, and I've also got next week, I've got the lovely Amy Copeland, who is the CEO of the ICB. So looking forward to having a chat with her. And that's quite a new role for her. So it'd be interesting to grill her about what she's up to. So Mark, my question to you is, when you were a wee little boy running around the playground at primary school, what did you want to do when you left school and grew up?
Yeah, professional footballer.
Brilliant.
Lift the FA Cup as a captain.
Fantastic. Which team would you have played for?
Well, if it was my chosen team, it would have been Wolves, of course, where I came from. However, I had a Villa scout who came to watch me in the Sunday League when I was 16 years old, but basically sadly said I wasn't fast enough for the top level of professional football. I continued playing competitively till I was 54 when I ruptured my Achilles tendon playing on West Brom's pitch, playing a five-a-side tournament, actually on the Hawthorns pitch. But yeah, so I loved the game. But then I spoke to my father, who qualified as an accountant. It was the coal board when we had a coal industry.
Yep,
and then he went into higher education where he taught economics, law and accounts. And I said, what's the fastest way to the top in the boardroom? They said, become an accountant. So I said, okay, I'll do that then.
Perfect. And you haven't looked back?
No, I mean, I still have dreams about, playing on the pitch at Wembley, but it's never going to happen now.
Not for Wolves, but maybe an accountancy 11.
Possibly, but no. After the Achilles thing, I stopped playing. But I have to say, yeah. I mean, the sometimes things don't turn out how you dream, but don't stop dreaming.
No, absolutely.
You have to. And I will continue working for many years. People say, "Why don't you retire?" Well, I don't want to. I'm having too much fun, and I don't want to miss anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. What a great way to end a show. Mark, you've been absolutely superb. Thank you to everybody for all their lovely questions. And I guess I'll see you at Accountex, but I'll definitely see you at your conference in October.
Indeed.
Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah. Thank you, Ashley, and thank all of you for being with us today.
Brilliant. Thank you. Cheerio, everybody. Bye-bye.
You get out what